Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Movie Snob. I am your host, at least for today. I am Ethan. And I had the chance to go see The Last Airbender today, which was written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. This movie is based on the Nickelodeon cartoon series created by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. While based on an animated series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, which underwent a bit of a title change due to James Cameron's Avatar release last year. It's a tale about a mythological world where different kingdoms and tribes based around the four elements earth, air, fire, and water coexist. Now, I'm not too familiar with the cartoon series or anything, but I've been told that it's pretty good. So with that in mind, I dived into The Last Airbender. Now, my first instinct when I saw the trailer for this movie was that it was going to be a fun, epic kung fu movie with wiggity superpowers. Now, as it turns out, I was only partially right. This movie stars Noah Ringer as Ong, who's the long-lost avatar in this world. As I said earlier, the world contains these various kingdoms that follow the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And well, with the balance of the elements and with balance of the elements and the basically earth, air, fire, and water, the balance of these kingdoms is kept by the balance of these kingdoms and the elements, is based on the Avatar, basically, who's pretty much the Dalai Lama, except he has powers over all the elements and the ability to contact the realm of spirits. So I guess technically it might just be the Dalai Lama. I don't know. I never met the guy. When the movie opens, we're told that the Avatar disappeared 100 years ago, and since then the fearsome Fire Kingdom has been basically being a bunch of jackasses and taking over other kingdoms. We meet Katara, who's played by Nicola Peltz, and her brother Sokka, who's played by Jackson Rathbone, who is the guy who played Jasper Hale in the Twilight movies. They're lamenting on how their lives are hard and in the northern water tribe, and that Sokka isn't that great a hunter, which is of course why he's out hunting. Of course, they find Ong and his giant flying beaver, who's frozen in ice. I'm not joking; it's pretty much a giant flying beaver with horns, and they free him with an oddly wacky shaped boomerang. And Ong is unconscious, as is the giant beaver, whom they seemingly leave there because, well, he's giant, and I don't see either of them dragging him back. Either way, I'm still sort of confused as to why, during the first sequence of this movie, they're talking about how, their whole village is starving and all that, and they find this giant, horned beaver. I'm surprised they didn't go, "Tonight we eat like kings," and dive on in. But apparently that does happen in the cartoon series, does not happen here. Well, it happens in the cartoon series, but as I understand it, that they poke him with the spear, and then he gets all indignant and stomps him, and, it's just a giant flying beaver, who apparently is supposed to be able to also bend air and fly, and that's how they learned all that stuff. Anyway, regardless, they take Ong, at least, back to their village where he recovers. It's at this point where the Fire Kingdom shows up and takes him hostage, as they happen to just be in the area where the kid was frozen in ice for 100 years, and yeah, there you go. They just happen to just be passing by, and I got nothing. It's at this point, there's some posturing, of course, and some tension, as we're supposed to worry about the villagers and the safety of this these peaceful people and the elderly and all this. And Katara, we figure out also early on and now here that Katara is a waterbender and is the last one of their tribe as well, because all the others have been rounded up and taken away by the fire people, whatever. Basically, the adventure goes on from there. They take him, the two, Sokka and Katara, decide that they're going to go rescue him with the big flying beaver, who we didn't know was flying, but is flying now with children hanging off of him. we don't know how he kind of showed up there. He just did. But basically, the adventure goes on from there. I don't want to ruin it too much more for people that I already have, obviously. But ultimately, one of the things I can say about this movie is if you go and read a synopsis online, that's about as exciting as it is to see this movie. This movie does two things basically. It either assumes that it basically assumes that you've seen the series, or it assumes that you know who the characters are when you walk into the theater. Now, I haven't seen the series at all. I mean, I obviously had seen bits and pieces of it here and there, but I really didn't know any of the names of the characters. I didn't know who they were. I really didn't know what the Airbender was. It looked like some sort of anime thing, and then I found out, oh no, it's an American show on Nickelodeon that just looks like an anime. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But basically, because all the dialogue in this movie is all expository. There's no real time or place in the movie for character development. You don't get to know the characters. You don't get to get an idea of where they're coming from, how they interact together, that sort of thing. We're just sort of literally told either by narration or by people giving little speeches or little bits of dialogue about things that we're supposed to know, and it's done along the lines of, well, hey Bob, you know this. It really strikes me, this movie, as if the writer, who would be M. Night Shyamalan again, I don't know whether he just insists on writing his own movies, even if it's not his original idea, whatever. It must be his thing. I don't know. But Shyamalan took like the first 20 episodes of the first season of the show and composited down to like a page and a half of bullet points. And then proceeded to try and connect each one with insipid dialogue and establishing narration, basically. We're basically told everything we know as the movie goes on, often with multiple times, with one instance of the movie actually beginning, like a person actually beginning their dialogue with, well, as you all know, it's like watching a Superman movie, basically, where someone looks up in the sky, sees Superman fly overhead, and turns to someone that's just walking down the street and says, hey, that's Superman, and he can fly. Entirely just to say, hey, this is happening because of this, just so you know, because we all know this, so there's no reason for us to say it, but you need to know it as the viewer because you're an idiot, and you wouldn't know this unless we told you. So okay. Now, I'm just wondering whatever happened to good character development, story continuity, and linear narratives. This movie spends the entire time explaining what everything is, who everyone is, and just moves on, assuming that you know who the characters are and what's going on. The characters are introduced, and in the random narration of Katara, we're told that her, basically things happen. For instance, there's one moment they make it to the Northern Water Kingdom, Northern Water Tribe, and we're introduced to the princess character, who's this pretty girl with white hair. And through the narration of Katara, we're told that her brother falls in love with this character, and in the very next scene, we're supposed to just believe that and move on. I mean, literally, they meet. In her narration, she says they fall in love, more or less. She says they fall in love. And in the next scene, he's becoming her protector, and I guess we're supposed to figure out that some time has passed, otherwise Aang learns how to control the water element in like a week and a half. Now, this character could be an interesting character, but with conversations that seem plugged in to try and fill plot holes and to explain something that happens later, or maybe to cover something that is, oh wait, this is really important in the TV series, so we need to point it out here. We learned things about some characters, especially this character, that become relevant and very important to the plot, and in about 10 minutes screen time, she dies. So really, we don't have any sort of establishing connection to the character, and if we're supposed to feel this bad for her, why didn't we get more development with her? Why didn't we see the character interact with the other characters? Why didn't we basically see the character from the beginning of the movie, and just intercut? I mean, there could have been something very interesting there. I don't care if it wasn't in the original series, if she's only in 2 or 3 episodes. So what? This is a movie. This is not something that you sit down and you watch 20 episodes of. I mean, it does. You got to translate it in different ways. basically it's like Shyamalan drops a character in and tells us why they're important. Tells us that they're important, and we have to trust them. Then he moves on to something completely unrelated. It's like, okay, you're supposed to trust this guy anyway. Over here, this is happening. It's like there's a guy sitting in a room telling you this story. I mean, it's basically be if I grabbed a synopsis of the script and read it to you right now. It would be as exciting as seeing this film. Now, speaking of Shyamalan, I think Shyamalan is a victim of his own success, quite frankly. He came out with The Sixth Sense immediately as his first directorial big hit. You know, got an Oscar nomination. I mean, just fantastic movie. And then he followed it up with my personal favorite movie he did was Unbreakables. Great film. And this movie's just so out of character for him to direct. It's supposed to be his first big action film, right? The Happening came out, and I've heard it. I haven't seen it personally. I've heard it described as the Crappening. I've heard that the concept is kind of freaky, but the execution is crap. But watching this movie, it quickly becomes apparent that action movies are not his strong point. In the fight scenes where you have these supposedly great fighters wielding these awesome elemental powers over air, earth, and fire, and water, and all this stuff, they're just downright boring. When a fight starts to get relatively interesting, it ends. There's these powers that aren't really used or explained that much in the film. They're just not explained enough that so we just don't care. You know, I mean, you have these characters who are fighting. We're like, there's just supposed to be some big epic battle going on, and so I don't care. It's almost as if he's like, I want to do my own Lord of the Rings movies. Okay, we'll do this. And he fails miserably. Now, that's the biggest problem with this movie is I just don't care. Judging by the reaction to the movie from my brother and his wife, who've seen the entire cartoon series, fans of the show will scratch their heads and ask, you know, why the heck did they change that? Why is this character doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And they got more annoyed and angry than I did. I mean, at seeing this movie. Now, basically, this movie's a big disappointment. It's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, only made for kids, without any of the cool fight scenes, and good acting, and good writing. So, really, I guess it's trying to be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon for kids, but falls flat on its face instead. Now, movie's not as insulting as Prince of Persia was by any means, but it certainly leaves you with this big feeling of disappointment. It's not quite in your face and assuming that you're an idiot and stupid, but it moves along so fast that you just have no time to get to know any of the characters or any of the locations. You sort of go, okay, how big is this area they're in? I mean, are they going vast distances, or really, who cares? You know, at one point I had to go use the bathroom in the middle of the movie, and I'm like, I'm not going to miss anything important because, you know, an hour has gone by and nothing's happened. So really, to sum up, The Last Airbender is another in this summer's long line of disappointments. This summer's just not shaping up particularly well. I mean, really, the only movies I've seen that I've liked this summer have been The A-Team and Iron Man 2. So, really, ultimately, I can say just don't waste your time on this movie. It's really not worth the effort to go see. It's a movie that if I spotted it on TV, I wouldn't watch it, just because it's like, that movie was kind of boring. So really, ultimately, I'd give it a 0 on or give it a -1 on character. The effects were great, so it gets a +1 on that. Production is pretty good, so it gets a +2 on that. The direction was terrible. I mean, and I love Shyamalan. I think he's like Hitchcock level of good director, and this movie's just terrible. So it's another -1 from that. So really, that's sitting at the 0 mark, sitting at dead even mark, and see production effects, character. Yeah, it's it's just one of those movies. Ultimately, my rating on this movie is going to have to be, judging probably using my caveat, I'd probably ended up at a 3. It's better than Prince of Persia, but it's just not really worth any effort or really any time to go see it. So that's it, guys. If hope you enjoyed it. If you find yourself in the movie theater seeing it, go see Toy Story 3 instead, I guess. I haven't seen that one yet, but I still intend to. So keep watching.